So we've looked at TPACK, and now we're going to investigate further about what TPACK means and looks like in music contexts. You've seen this diagram before, and today we're going to go even deeper and think about, okay, well, what does that mean within music contexts? So let's take a look. Just to recap, TPACK stands for Technological, Pedagogical, and Content Knowledge, and it's in the intersection of the three types of those knowledge that's referred to as the sweet spot. The content knowledge equals the what of teaching, specifically the knowledge and skills of a particular concept. So for example, if we were going to select the concept of improvisation to teach students, the content would be the knowledge of what improvisation is, and the skills around it would be how to improvise. And then pedagogical knowledge is how we would teach our students to understand what improvisation is and how we would teach our students to actually improvise. And then the technological knowledge, if you remember from the TPACK video, is the available technology that can help our students best learn the content. And remember that technology not only stands by itself, but it also is influencing what and how we teach. So what are some examples that you can think of how technology has changed music education? I want you to think about this and be ready to discuss it in class. But for the sake of this video, let's use practicing as an example. Practicing music has existed for many, many, many years before you or I were alive, but the concept of practicing has changed with the evolution of digital technology. So let's first start with the C of TPACK, which is content knowledge. When we think about practicing, it's really the concept of what practicing is. In other words, the knowledge and skills that are related to the art of practicing. So have you ever really stopped to think about, well, what is practicing and how do you practice? And that's really what I would select, one thing that I would select for students to learn about. So then with that idea of content in mind, what about the pedagogical knowledge? In other words, how, as a teacher, would I teach my students to learn what practicing is and actually how to practice, the knowledge and skills of practicing? So that's content and pedagogy kind of isolated from each other. And then we have this idea of the technological knowledge, which is the awareness and ability to use technology that helps us deliver instruction. In other words, teach students what a concept is. So the knowledge of practicing and how to practice. And also technology that can help them learn what technology is and learn how to practice. So let's investigate this further. Now we've looked at each concept in isolation, but let's look at the intersections. So good teachers not only think about technology, pedagogy, and content, but they think about how they align. So let's think about how technology and pedagogy align. So in other words, an understanding of how technology can help us deliver content. So again, keeping with this practicing example, I might record YouTube tutorials so that students can continue practicing at home with guidance. So instead of me just having a 1-hour lesson with them and saying good luck for the rest of the week, they could refer to these YouTube clips constantly. And then I might create what's called a digital learning space, a learning community online for them to keep in touch with other students, with their peers, and with me to see how the learning's going. So in other words, I'm taking this idea of how to teach them and I'm using technology to enhance it to make it even better. Now let's look at technology and content knowledge. Okay, so understanding how technology can help students better understand the content that we're delivering. So when we think about practicing, well, I might use the technology of a metronome to help students understand how to practice. So this is a metronome app. I might use another app, which is a fingering chart app, okay, so that they can use that on their own and during our our lesson times. And then I might use Churbit, which is an online recording source, so that they can record their practicing and listen back to it. I might also guide them in using just their smartphone and video recording their progress so that they could send it to me. And they could actually upload it as a YouTube video, or they could post it on our digital learning site on Schoology. By the way, we're going to be using Schoology during our course. Now let's go down to pedagogical content knowledge. Okay, so the intersection of how to teach and what to teach. And that's really, in our case, the knowledge of teaching music, which you learn about mostly in your methods courses. So suddenly this idea of content, pedagogy, and technology, all those technological knowledges, content knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge come together for this idea of the TPACK model. So instead of thinking about the content of practicing, how to teach people how to practice, and the available technology in isolated and separate ways, the TPACK model is all about having those come together. So that, in other words, they come together in that what was referred to in the previous TPACK video as the sweet spot. So between now and our next class, I'd like you to think about what's another example of content you could teach your music students using the TPACK model. And be prepared to explain your example and to demonstrate your example as well in class.